Hi all, welcome to the Environment and Ecology session as a part of iLearn's prelims program. So when it comes to environment and UPSC exam, this particular topic, this particular subject always poses many challenges to the aspirants. Getting it? So many of you may be thinking about environment is all technical, it's all science, it's all Greek. Okay, so many of the students or many of the aspirants would find it too difficult to comprehensively analyze or understand the subjects or topics discussed in particular environment. Because some may be thinking like this is bit scientific. Those who are from science background can only tackle this ecology or environment portion. So this can be one challenge associated with environment. And even there are persons, they may be thinking like environment is all factual. Not just it's bit technical, but also it's factual. So whenever they think about environment, things like national park, wildlife sanctuaries, or n number of species, or all those other protected sites and initiatives, which will all coming into their mind, which will make them to think like environment is all factual. And even some may be thinking like, unlike polity and modern India, if I'm taking some examples, I won't be getting any kind of satisfaction even if I'm reading environment topic or environment related subjects multiple times, because I don't have a standard study material, I don't have a specific syllabus to which I'm able to sticking into. Absence of the syllabus, absence of the study material, which makes that unsatisfactory feeling into aspirant's mind. Okay, so all these concerns, that is bulkiness, factual, technical, lack of a standard material, all these concerns normally makes environment a Herculean task for UPSC aspirants. But is that the subject really so? Do you think it's so? In my opinion, it's not. Okay, it's not disorganized, it's not factual, it's not technical if we invest our time and effort judiciously and efficiently. Just like any other subject in UPSC syllabus, UPSC's pick of syllabus, environment is as easy as any other subject. Okay, so if you invest your time and effort judiciously and more efficiently, you can tackle environment. That is my assurity, and that is the very purpose of this particular session. So this is it, environment ecology. My aim is to make this so-called highly disorganized, highly factual, highly technical subject into a simple, coherent and very organized subject, so that you will be getting that satisfaction once you complete this video lecture. So this is the very aim of this particular section on environment and ecology. Getting it? So this is it. And before getting into the questions and before getting into the topics, it's very important to know the surface. Okay, for any exam, whether it be UPSC's civil service exam or forest service exam, or even if it is CGL, it is very important to know the syllabus. Those who know the ground, the surface well, can expect any kind of delivery which will come after them. They can be prepared. So the best way to study about, to tackle environment, just like any other subject, is to have an idea about syllabus. So these are the two parts on syllabus. Okay, this is a very small syllabus. Okay, and my intention is to make this session maximum interactive. Okay, so whenever I am saying you to write down certain thing or jot down certain thing, you have to really do it. Okay, after pausing this video, you have to really do this. Okay, so only if you are following my instruction, this entire section will become interactive and interesting. Otherwise, it can be a monotonous session which will make you a bit bored regarding this subject. Okay, so whenever I am telling you something to note it down, something to jot it down, you have to do it after pausing this video. So whenever you are finished with it, you can resume the video and see it again, so that this entire session will become interactive. I would like to have an interactive session. So one of the problem with this virtual section is that most of the sections, most of the times may go monotonous and may go one-sided. Okay, so in order to avoid that problem, try to interact with me through your mind and interact with me by following the instructions I'm giving you. Okay, so whenever I'm telling something to note it down, you please note it down. I'm repeating it. Okay, so that will be the mode of our discussion. We'll have some handout, we'll have some practice question, we'll have some slides which you will be seeing right now. Okay, so whenever I will say to read that handout, pause the video, go and read the handout, and all the materials will be available. Do not worry. Getting it? So whenever I say to read this particular portion in your handout number X, you have to read it. And whenever I say do the first 5 questions in this particular portion, do it after pausing this video. And after finishing it, come and resume the video, then watch it again. So this is how we can make it an interactive session. Otherwise, it will be very boring. Okay, an one-sided monotonous talk is very boring. I'm knowing it. Getting it? So this will be the mode of discussion, and let me jump into the syllabus. So this is the syllabus of UPSC's environment. Okay, it includes both mains and prelims syllabus. Okay, and look what UPSC says. UPSC says you have to focus on general issues on environment and ecology. That is only UPSC is telling you. Do not be a subject expert. Okay, UPSC do not want you to be a subject expert in environment or in ecology. An aspirant should only know the general issues that happens in environment, that happens around us. And can you tell me and can you write down what are the general issues that happens in environment? Just take a minute and write it down. What will be the general issues? Okay, pause the video and try to write it. Then we'll be discussing it. Getting it? So the general issues can be global warming, ozone depletion, deforestation, ice melt, polar ice melting, pollution, species extinction, okay, then drought or environmental degradation, okay, plastic pollution. So there are n number of general issues. There are n number of general issues that happens in our environment every day. So UPSC only tells you to have an idea about those general issues which occurs all around us every day. Literally on every day. So this is it. So you have to focus on those general issues. And again, biodiversity and climate change that do not require subject specialization. That sentence you should not. Okay, basic issues in environment and ecology or in biodiversity, and that is related to climate change. All these sectors, all these areas should be understood in a general perspective, not in a subject expert perspective. Getting it? So this is an important line regarding the syllabus of UPSC's environment portion. You should only to have a general understanding about the general issues. That is important. And some other portions are there: conservation, environmental pollution and degradation, finally environmental impact assessment. So these are the things you should cover. These are the things you should cover. So look at the nature of the syllabus. Look at the nature of the syllabus. Syllabus is a small one compared to other subject in UPSC's exam, civil service exam. Syllabus of environment is too small to cover. Okay, so that is why I am telling you, if you invest your time judiciously and efficiently, you can easily cover all of the environment related topics. Getting it? So this is the second part of our discussion, getting to know the syllabus. Okay, and just like knowing the syllabus, it's highly important that how much do you want to invest in environment? If all these syllabus are to be studied just for 5 or 10 marks, is it worthy of investing time into it? That can be a question, right? Oh, up to which time, up to what extent should we invest our effort in environment? Will we get some good return on investment if we invest our time in ecology or environment? That can be a question. Do not worry, I've done the backup for you. So this is it. So this is a graph showing the total number of questions asked every year starting from 2011. So from 2011 to 2019, you will be getting around average 18 questions every year. And in some years like 2013 and 14, it went up to 21 or 23. Okay. So what do you understand by this graphical analysis? UPSC gives very much importance to environment in prelims exam. Why? Is there any common logic behind it? UPSC cannot avoid environment. Why? Because in 2013 they combined both IFOS and civil service exam prelims. And IFOS students from science background or technical background, UPSC cannot avoid environment. UPSC should ask environment related questions to them. UPSC should ask science related questions to them. That is why environment is always on the list. Environment is always on the list. Getting it? So this is important. You are getting around 18 questions, and if you consider that geography questions which may overlap with environment, that number can go up to 20. Which means on a mark wise you can expect 40 marks, up to 40 marks in a particular year's UPSC paper from environment portions alone. See, think about that 110 mark which will make you unable to cross the line, and out of this 110 mark, 40 is from environment alone. So look how highly important is environment. So this is the importance of environment. You have to invest your time. And you understood the syllabus, you understood the importance. Getting it? So this is an introduction I have to give to you on recognizing the importance of environment. Getting it? And let me tell you one more thing. Even though the subject name is environment and ecology, even though both are interconnected, in exam perspective both are different. So let me tell you again, even though environment and ecology both are interconnected, in exam perspective both are a bit different. Why? Because UPSC gives more importance to environment than on ecology. Okay, so I have given you a 5-year question paper analysis, a compilation of last 5 years question. If you check the last page of that handout, you can find out that out of the last 5 years question paper, out of the total 70 or something questions, only 5 or 6 were from ecology portions. Okay, so please check that handout. You can find out that out of the 70 questions in last 5 years, only 5 or 6 directly from ecology, and all the other 65 or 64 questions were from environment portions. Okay, so what makes environment different from ecology? That's a question. What makes environment different from ecology? I would say ecology is highly technical. Ecology is a bit science, a bit theory. But the practical side of ecology is what? Environment. The practical side of ecology is what? Environment. See, if you study about food chain, if you study about biomagnification in ecology, I'm giving you just a random example. I'll explain these terms later. If you study biomagnification in ecology portion, the practical side of that biomagnification is what? Pollution. Pollution. Getting it? And if you study about decomposition in ecology, the practical side of that particular decomposition comes in areas like oil zappers or oil spill degradation, etc. So these are the two sides. One is highly theoretical, other one is highly practical. So UPSC focuses on the practical side of this particular topic. So you have to focus on environment. Okay. So a conventional approach to the environment and ecology would be like this. Okay. I'm going to tell you the conventional approach of environment and ecology. All the faculties, all the lectures will be first focusing on ecology. Even if it is not asked by UPSC very frequently, all the faculties, all this textbook which will discuss about environment ecology will give more importance to ecology. First they will be giving you all the concepts, all the ideas regarding ecology, then they will be moving slightly into environment. It is important that to know the concept of ecology. There is no dispute in it, arguments in it. But how much should you invest? That's a question. Do you want to invest more in ecology or environment? because based on our analysis you have to invest more on environment, not on ecology. Getting it? So my approach would be different. Rather than studying ecology at first, rather than completing ecology at first, I'll be starting with the environment related topic, and within those environment related topics I'll be telling some ecological concepts which is needed to explain that environment topic. Getting it? So for example, if I need to explain coral bleaching, you have to know what do you mean by a symbiotic association. That is important. Symbiotic association is ecology, coral bleaching and coral is actually environment. So you have to learn symbiotic association first, then you have to move into coral bleaching. So I'll be only discussing those important ecological concepts which is required for explaining environment things. So this will be the mode of study, mode of explanation. So by the end of this entire video lecture, you will be covering both environment and ecology together, not as two separate sessions. So this will be my approach. You getting it? So this is mode of discussion. And one more thing before starting into the topic, let me tell you that you will be having some handouts with you for each of the module that contains almost all the portions. And at the end of each of the handouts, there will be some practice questions. Okay, so my mode of discussion would be, I'll be telling you some concept first, and based on the concept you have to read that handouts. If you want to note something, you have to note it down after pausing the video. Then after the discussion, after the reading of that handout, you have to practice. I'll be telling you to solve first 5 questions or first 3 questions based on this particular topic. Okay, so once you finish my video session and reading of this handout and practicing those 5 questions, you will become a master in that topic. Okay, that is for sure. So this is how the mode of discussion will be going on. First I will be explaining you some things, then I will be telling you to read that handout or to write down some things, and after that we will be going with the practice questions so that you can practice and make yourself a master in that particular topic. So this is how our discussion will go on. Getting it? So this is it, and all the handouts will be provided to you, don't worry. Got it? And this is environment ecology for you, and this is the syllabus for you, and this is the total number of questions that can be asked in every year. Remember, on mark wise you will be getting around 40 marks. This is highly important. And for sake of explanation, I have done an analysis work based on previous year paper, and for the sake of explanation I have divided the entire environment ecology into 6 different modules. Okay, 6 different modules, and I have made some graph based on previous year question paper. And if you analyze this graph, you will be getting the relative importance of each of the portions. Look at ecology, as I discussed earlier. Look at the importance of ecology. UPSC used to ask, ecology is the green one. UPSC used to ask ecology in the first 4 years regularly. 2011 to 2014, UPSC gave enough importance to ecology. There is not a question. But remember, after 2014, there were hardly any questions. in ecology. That is why I am telling you, importance of ecology has come down. Importance of ecology has come down. Now you have to focus on these things. Okay, environment related things. This is highly important. Okay, so that is why I'll be first picking up environment portions, and I'll try to integrate some of the ecological topics which are required for to explain that particular thing. Getting it? So please write down the modules. Okay, please write down the modules which we'll be discussing here, because it will help you to have an idea about where do we stand at a particular situation or a time. Okay, so my module 1 will be regarding climate change. Module 1 will be regarding climate change. Okay, So because out of these 70 questions, 40 or 50 questions were from this particular climate change area. Okay, so in climate change, I will be dealing 3 different areas, 3 different topics. First one, global warming. Second one, deforestation and degradation. Deforestation and degradation. Third thing, ozone depletion. Ozone depletion. So these are the 3 things that comes under climate change. Then module 2 will be pollution. Okay, so module 2 will be pollution. Getting it? So after finishing module 1, we'll be going into module 2, where I'll be covering pollution there. Then let me write the third module. Third module will be, module 3 will be protected area networks. Protected area networks, where we'll study all the data and all the important information regarding India's protected area networks like national park, wildlife sanctuaries, Ramsar site, tiger reserve, etc. So module 3 will be protected area networks. Then module 4 will be national environment initiatives and legislations. Okay, so there are many initiatives, national initiatives, just like Project Tiger or Project Dolphin or National Action Plan for Climate Change. So these kind of national environment initiatives will be dealt there, and along with some important legislation starting from the Forest Rights Act 1927. Currently we are having the Waste Management Rule 2018. Okay, there are some 11 or 12 most important environment legislations are there, and we will be studying those legislations here. Getting it? Then the third thing would be, next module would be, module 5 would be biodiversity. So by biodiversity, I mean that there are some general aspects of biodiversity. What is biodiversity? What are the threats to biodiversity? What are the different components, important components of India's biodiversity, just like mangrove reefs, just like mangroves, just like coral reefs, just like tropical rainforests. In India, there are some important biodiversity components. So we will be dealing about that biodiversity components. Then it would be species protection. Sixth module will be species protection. Important species which are protected in India, important initiatives which we have taken to protect those species, and regarding IUCN Red List and their present status. These kind of things would be discussed there. Sixth one. And finally, those portions which we left out in ecology would be discussed. This will be regarding ecology. Okay, module 7. I already told you that I won't be giving any separate time for discussing ecology. Rather, I will be discussing ecology through all these portions. Whenever I need to explain ecology, I will explain ecology in all these modules. Finally, if there is any left out portion, I will be discussing those in ecology, last module, and which can either be used by you as a revision module also. So this will be the structure of our entire discussion on environment and ecology. Getting it? So module 1 would be climate change, and that is our very first module which we are going to discuss. Getting it? So getting into climate change. And under climate change, what will be the first portion? Under climate change, the first portion would be global warming. Okay, so global warming would be the first portion. Write down global warming. Write down global warming. Okay. So before getting into global warming, let me tell you something. Have you heard about greenhouse gases or greenhouse effect? I think almost all of you have heard about greenhouse effect and greenhouse gases. But where did this concept got originated, greenhouse? Let me explain you something with a picture. So in temperate region, in those regions where insolation is very less, farmers used to plant green plants in a house, in a glass house. Green plants in a glass house where it will allow the short waves or short radiations from sun to get to into it. And upon hitting the surface, upon hitting these plants, these short wavelength will be converted as long waves. Short waves and long waves. In fact, these long waves are not allowed to go through these glass house or glass panes. So that heat energy or insolation will be there in the greenhouse gas itself. Okay, so let me draw it again. So short wave radiations would be coming in and long wave radiation won't be coming out. So this is known as short waves and long waves. This particular structure is known as a greenhouse. A glass house, a transparent house used for planting green plants or cultivating green crops. And this is how the mechanism works. Okay, and questions like why glass is not allowing long wave and why is it only allowing short waves is beyond our discussion. Okay, that is not environment, that is actually physics. But we don't need to discuss it, which is not required here. Okay, here we only discuss about the greenhouse and its working. And just like this greenhouse, artificial greenhouse, we have a natural greenhouse effect in our earth. Just like that artificial greenhouse which we used to build for cultivating crops, we have a natural greenhouse made by our atmosphere. Atmosphere just acts like a transparent greenhouse, a glass plane which will only allow the short waves to come in, and long waves, the long wave components won't be allowed to go out. Mainly infrared. Okay, infrared radiations are long waves. So these infrared radiations won't be allowed to go through the atmosphere. Okay, some percentage can be filtered out, but most of the infrared radiations would be there. So this is the natural greenhouse. Natural greenhouse. Now what is the impact of this natural greenhouse? Is that required to have a minimum level of greenhouse effect in earth? That can be a question. And the answer is yes, we should have a minimum amount of greenhouse effect in earth. Otherwise we would have frozen. Why? Because in the absence of greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, methane, or even nitrous oxide, which are the most prominent contributors to greenhouse gas effect. In the absence of these gases, our Earth's surface would have been at a temperature level of minus 18 degrees Celsius. Minus 18 degrees Celsius. And with the help of these greenhouse gases, the temperature level now has become plus 15 degrees Celsius. This is only an average temperature. So this is the importance of greenhouse gases. So it is good to have a minimum amount of greenhouse gas effect in earth. But what happens if we continue to contribute more greenhouse gases than the required amount? What will happen? This average temperature will rise. What if we combust more fossil fuel? What if we burn more biomass? What if we produce more industrial activities? All these activities will contribute gases like carbon dioxide and methane into atmosphere, which will elevate this average temperature. And this elevation, rise in average global temperature and its associated effects are togetherly known as what? Global warming. Global warming. Now you got the concept? Global warming means the phenomena of increasing global average temperature as a consequence of increasing concentration in greenhouse gases into Earth atmosphere. You're getting it? So this is the concept of greenhouse effect. Got it? So that's it. And please take out your handout number 1, page number 1, global warming. Please take it and read the first column, greenhouse effect. There you will be finding some important information. And please note down that only nitrous oxide is global warming gas, but gases like nitrogen oxide, NO and NO2. Okay, as I said in the handout, NO and NO2 are actually globally cooling. They do the opposite effect, not warming up the atmosphere. Getting it? So you will be getting some information in that handout. First column. Okay, so pause the video, take 2 minutes or 3 minutes to read it and come back. So if you have finished reading, here is another information, important information. So these are the relative contribution of some gases. These are some relative contribution of some greenhouse gases to global warming. So look at the contribution by carbon dioxide from two different sectors, from fossil fuel burning and from forestry. Combinedly, carbon dioxide contributes 75% of the total greenhouse gases, total global warming. So the maximum contribution is from carbon dioxide, that's a fact that can be asked. And after carbon dioxide, it's methane. And after methane, it's nitrous oxide. Okay, so this order is important. Carbon dioxide first, methane second, then it's nitrous oxide. So this is important to have an idea about this order. Okay, so this is the contribution of greenhouse gases into global warming. Got it? So this is the first thing you have to learn. Getting in? So if you are clear with the idea of greenhouse gas effect or greenhouse effect and global warming, please take the last page of your handout where you can find number of questions based on the data which we studied here, and do the first 5 questions. Try to do the first 5 questions in your handout. So all those questions are related to concepts which we studied here. So first finish doing that 5 questions, then wait for my answer. Getting it? So this will be the mode of discussion. Got it? So first question. Earth atmosphere is heated up mainly by shortwave radiations of electromagnetic spectrum. Is that correct? First one. Is Earth atmosphere is heated up by shortwave radiations? No. It is by long wave radiation, which means the first statement is wrong. Second one. Refrigeration, growing paddy, use of fertilizer, burning e-waste are some of the activities that produce greenhouse gases. Are some of the activities. Possibility of coming out of a greenhouse gas from these activities more than possibility of not coming out. Getting it? So here in this option there is a high possibility that these kind of greenhouse gases can come out. So our answer would be 2 only. Getting it? So first question 2 only is the answer which we studied here. So these questions are all UPSC model 1. So please practice it. Second one. The increasing amount of carbon dioxide in the air is slowly raising the temperature of the atmosphere because it absorbs. Because it absorbs the water vapor? No. The ultraviolet part? No. All the solar radiations? No. But infrared part of the solar radiation, which is the long wave radiation. So if you want a diagram, please watch this. So this is electromagnetic spectrum. Here we have visible light from 400 to 700 nanometer. Here we have red, here we have violet, and after red we have infrared, and after violet we have ultraviolet. So this is less than 400, which means short wave. This is more than 400, which means this is long wave. Okay, so this is the basis of this diagram. Getting in. So again, visible light from visible light from 400 to 700, and less than 400 it is ultraviolet, more than 700 it is infrared. Getting it? So this is the answer for the second one. And third one, can you arrange these sectors based on their contribution? In fact, we haven't studied this, so let me discuss it first, then we'll go to the questions. Okay, so listen to the video again. Let me introduce a new concept, global warming potential. Global warming potential. So what do you mean by global warming potential? Global warming potential means the potential of a gas to have an impact on global warming. Global warming potential means how much a gas can contribute into global warming. Okay, and we compare the global warming potential of a particular gas with CO2, because CO2 is the most abundant greenhouse gas, so we consider or we compare every other gas with carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide is the gas with least greenhouse gas potential or global warming potential. Okay, we take carbon dioxide as the basic unit and we compare all the other gases in terms of carbon dioxide. Take the example of methane. Methane has a global warming potential of 21, which means methane has a global warming potential 21 times that of equal to carbon dioxide. Okay, suppose carbon dioxide can cause global warming as at a 10%, and methane at the same instance with the same lifetime can cause 21 times of it, 210% global warming. And nitrous oxide compared to carbon dioxide, it is 310 times that of carbon dioxide. And look at it, HFCs, PFCs, SF6, all these have global warming potential more than carbon dioxide. So this order is important, a very fundamental order. You have to thorough with the global warming potential of these gases. Global warming potential of these gases. Okay, and let me give you more diagrams. These can be the questions which can be asked by UPSC. Global man-made greenhouse gas emissions by sector as of 2013, and no matter whether it is 2013 or 2019, because ratios are almost all the same. And which sector has the maximum contribution to greenhouse gas emission? It is actually what? Energy. Energy sector has the maximum contribution. Energy sector has the maximum contribution around 72. Okay, and if you want to round off it, take 75. 75% of the total greenhouse gas emission is from energy. And after energy, it is actually agriculture. After energy, it is actually agriculture. Okay, so energy comes first, agriculture comes second, then I have done the math work, you just need to copy it. After energy, it is actually, after agriculture, it is actually transportation. This 15% is 15% of energy, okay, not 15% of total. So first it would be energy, then it would be agriculture, then it would be transportation, then it would be land use change and forestry, other land use other than agriculture, okay. So this is the ratio, a percentage contribution of different sectors into global warming. First one, it would be energy sector, second one it would be agriculture, third one it is what? Transportation, then it's land use change and forestry. So this is a order you have to remain of. So you have to remember. So this is it. So this is sectoral contribution of greenhouse gases from 2013, and no matter what will be the year 2013, 2019, ratio is almost all the same. Okay. Then next graph shows the greenhouse gas emissions from top emitters, that is absolute emission by countries. And which countries tops the list? Actually China. Second one, it's US. Third one, if you take a region, it's European Union, or if it's a country, it's India. So these are the first 4 places based on the absolute emission of greenhouse gas emission. So this is another important factor. Okay, greenhouse gas emission absolute number in absolute quantity. These 4 are the largest contributors. And let me give you to the per capita emission. Okay, so what do you mean per capita emission? Emission per head. Emission per head. And which country has a maximum per capita emission? United States. Second, it is what? Russia. Russia. Third one, it is what? Japan. Fourth one, it is what? European Union. So look at the position of India. India is way behind United States, Russia or China. Per capita emission for India is too less. Per capita emission of India is too less. So remember the name of US. Per capita emission is maximum for US. And we have to see one more data, greenhouse gas intensity. So what do you mean greenhouse gas intensity? Greenhouse gas intensity means the quantity of greenhouse gas that will be produced to create an additional unit in GDP. Or if I simplify it, in order to produce 100 rupees, how much greenhouse gases a particular economy will emit? Suppose a country uses more renewable energy, its greenhouse gas intensity will be less. Suppose a country uses fossil fuel for every purpose, its emission intensity will be high. Got it? So again, a country that is using green fuel, that is renewable fuel, its greenhouse gas intensity will be very low. And if a country uses fossil fuel only for any other purpose or every purpose, its greenhouse gas emission intensity will be very high. Got it? So based on greenhouse gas emission intensity, it is Russia who stands top of the list, which means Russia uses maximum fossil fuel. Then it's China. Okay, and India's position, India's greenhouse gas emission intensity is actually less than the global average. So this is an important fact. Its greenhouse gas intensity is less than the global average. Got it? And one more graph for you. This is cumulative emission from 1750 to 2017. Cumulative emission. What do you mean cumulative emission? Cumulative emission means emission at the dawn of industrial revolution to 2020. Okay, no matter whether it is 2017 or 20, contribution is almost all the same. So by logic, the most industrialized countries would be the largest emitter from 1750 to 2020. Just like we assumed, United States is on top of the list, then it's European Union, then it's China. India, look again, India is again way behind in the case of cumulative emissions also. Getting it? So here we saw 4 different graphs: sectoral emission, absolute emission in a particular year, per capita emission, greenhouse gas emission intensity, and cumulative emissions. And look at these graphs. Through these graphs, you would have known that each country is contributing actually differently to greenhouse gas emission or global warming. Some countries are historically neglected, some countries will have historical advantage. So this is why the concept like common but differentiated responsibilities has an importance. What do you mean by common but differentiated responsibility? Everyone has a responsibility but differentiated responsibility. Why? Because historically, temporally, spatially, some countries benefited over others in many means. So countries like India, they don't have any historical emission data or historical emission which complicated the scenario. So now they have a privilege, a right to emit more so as to catch up with other countries. So this is the importance of common but differentiated responsibilities. Getting it? So this is global warming for you, this is greenhouse gas for you, and these are some of the facts associated with it. Keep on revising it, you will be getting any questions from 1 or 2 questions from here. Getting it? And move on to the question paper part. Move on to the question paper part, identify the correct answer. Consider the following. energy production, agriculture, transportation and land use change. And if it first one would be what? Energy production, second one would be agriculture, third one transportation, fourth one land use change. So first one is the correct one as we discussed. And again fourth one, before looking into answer, try to answer by your own. China is the topmost greenhouse gas emitting country. Yes, we saw it. USA has the maximum per capita greenhouse gas emission. Yes, we again saw it. India has the highest greenhouse gas emission intensity. India uses maximum fossil fuel for every purpose. Is it correct? In fact, which is wrong. Russia has the maximum greenhouse gas emission intensity. So statement 3 can be eliminated, right? Statement 3 can be eliminated. Yeah, 3 can be eliminated. Now we have 2 only or 1 and 2 only. In fact, 1 and 2 only is the correct one as we discussed. Fourth one. Again, fifth one. Heating effect due to global warming is more in northern hemisphere compared to the southern hemisphere. Is that statement correct? Use your logic. Heating effect due to global warming is more in northern hemisphere than southern hemisphere. Is that statement correct? Think about the basics. Okay, difference between northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere: more land here, less land here. Land will heat up more than water more easily, which means more heating effect here. Here there is less land means it is difficult to heat up water. So the first statement is correct. Then global warming may cause changes in global pattern of ocean current. You would have studied that ocean current, its flow is depending upon many factors, and one of the factors is density, and density is depending upon the temperature level. So global warming means more temperature, more heating up of ocean current, which means their pattern can be changed, which means both the statements are correct. So both 1 and 2 are the answer. Getting it? So this is how our class discussion will go on. I'll explain you a concept, I'll give you a chance to read the handout, then also will give you a chance to solve the questions related to it, so that you'll be get thorough with the topic. Getting it? So this is the first 5 questions we have solved in this particular topic. Getting it? And moving into the global warming again. So please do remember that it is not only the gases which contribute into global warming. In fact, there are some substances, some particles, some nanoparticles which can contribute into global warming. And we are going to study about those particles. So next portion, next topic is aerosols. Next topic is aerosols. So we have just seen that some gases which are known as greenhouse gases can contribute into global warming, and just like some gases, there are some compounds which can cause global warming or global dimming also. See, global dimming is the opposite of global warming. Okay, so let me introduce a new term known as aerosol. So what do you mean by aerosol? Aerosol means a combination of air plus solid particles or air plus liquid particles. Take the example of soot. Soot, the very soot that we emit from our chambers or combustion chambers. Soot is actually a mixture of air plus many solid particles. Soot is also known as black carbon. Black carbon. Okay, this is one example of aerosol which can cause what? Global warming. Okay, and let me give you more example for aerosol. Take the example of cloud. Cloud is actually an aerosol because water droplets are locked up into air molecules. Okay, that is actually cloud, and cloud is an example of aerosol. And will cloud cause global warming? In fact, many of the clouds actually reflects the sunlight away from earth, which may cause global dimming. Global dimming. So aerosol is a general term. It can cause either global warming or global dimming based on its chemical combination, structures, chemical structures and all. So within aerosol we have to study in detail about a particular aerosol, which is soot or black carbon. Okay, which causes global warming. So our next topic is black carbon, simply soot. Okay, black carbon or soot. Black carbon is a kind of aerosol. Black carbon is a kind of aerosol. Since it is black, it can absorb solar energy, light energy or heat energy and can cause global warming. Okay, which is a particulate matter. Which is a particulate matter. Particulate matter means tiny compounds which dissolved in air. Got it? So have you heard about this term albedo? Have you heard about this term albedo? Albedo is a reflecting capacity of a surface. That is albedo, right? So albedo is a reflecting capacity of a particular surface. And you have heard that white surfaces, shiny surfaces will have more albedo, which means more reflection of sunlight from the surface. More reflection than absorption means less global warming. Let me repeat it again. More reflection of heat energy than absorbing it means less global warming. So what is the purpose of black soot? Suppose we have a snow layer here, and black carbon is getting deposited all over the snow layer. The snow layer without black carbon would have reflected the solar energy, the heat energy and sunlight, heat energy and light energy. But snow layer with the deposition of black carbon or soot will absorb heat energy, which will increase the temperature and it will melt. Okay, so this is how black carbon or soot that will contribute into global warming. And here is a previous year question for you. Climate and Clean Air Coalition. Climate and Clean Air Coalition. Climate and Clean Air Coalition is an initiative by UNEP to reduce the concentration of short-lived climate pollutants. That's an important word. Short-lived climate pollutants like black carbon. So what do you mean by short-lived climate pollutant? Which will only dwell in atmosphere for a short period of time, even if it can be weeks or months. Once it rains, once precipitation happens, or by some other means, it will be get deposited into surface. It will not stay in atmosphere for a longer period of time. So this is short-lived climate pollutant. Example, black carbon. So Climate and Clean Air Coalition is an initiative by UNEP to reduce the amount of short-lived pollutants in atmosphere. Getting it? So this was a previous year question. Getting it? So that's it. That is about black carbon or soot. So that is one thing you have to read. So take the handout. First page of your handout, second column, there is black carbon or soot is there. Read it. Black carbon or soot is there. So just read it. Getting it? So if you finish reading, we'll be now moving into the impacts of global warming. Impacts of global warming. We learned what is global warming, what causes global warming. Now it's time to discuss the impact of global warming. Let me tell you that impact of global warming can be anything. We can connect any of the climate change related phenomena with global warming, that is for sure. And we cannot say that this particular incident, this particular climate change incident is not because of global warming. We cannot tell like that, because somehow one thing will be connected to some other thing. Okay, there will be a chain that connects all these events. So if someone is telling you to point out the impacts of global warming, these are the impacts, you can tell anything. Just like melting of ice caps, extreme climatic events like El Nino, environmental degradation like deforestation or desertification, rising health related issues like heat waves, heat wave related issues, biodiversity loss just like species extinction, absence of food security. Global warming means less crops means no food security. Deterioration of carbon sink. Carbon sink means places we can store carbon dioxide. Most importantly, they are green plants. So global warming means destruction of green plants, which means destruction of carbon sinks. sea level change. Global warming means more ice melting. More ice melting means rise in sea level. Ocean acidification. Okay, that how ocean acidification, that we will discuss. So these are the major impacts of global warming, and within these impacts we are going to discuss about ocean acidification. Okay, so impacts we discussed it. So remember that any of the impact can be connected with each other. Getting it? So there I have given you two columns, two additional columns: global temperature, El Nino and global warming. Please read it. Okay, so please read it. There are some important facts in related to global warming and El Nino, global warming and global temperature, two associated facts. So read that two columns. Then we will be moving into ocean acidification. So if you finish all reading global temperature and El Nino and global warming, those two columns in page number 2, let me move into ocean acidification first. Okay, so let me explain about ocean acidification, then you can read the handout, then you can solve the question paper. So this is highly important. Ocean acidification is highly important. Please study it thoroughly. A question can expect here, from here. So let me explain about ocean acidification in detail. Let me explain about ocean acidification in detail. So what do you mean by ocean acidification? First of all, what is acidification? So acidification means in chemical language, in language of chemistry, we'll be saying like ocean acidification means acidification of any solution means decreasing the value of pH. Okay, decreasing the value of pH scale. Normally we have pH scale that varies from 0 to 14. Anything at around 7 is called as a neutral solution. Anything in between 7 to 14 is alkaline. Anything in between 0 to 7 is actually what? Acid. So acidification means reduction in pH value scale. Okay, 14 to 13 is actually acidification. 13 to 12 is actually acidification. 12 to 7 is actually acidification. 7 to 0 is actually also acidification. So acidification does not mean that solution has turned into acid. Acidification does not mean the solution has turned into acidic. It only means that it is moving towards the position of acid. There is a tendency of decreasing pH scale. There is a tendency of decreasing pH value. This is what acidification. So ocean acidification means ocean water naturally have a pH value around 7.58. It's slightly alkaline. So ocean acidification means this value is getting reduced. This value is getting reduced. That is ocean acidification at its core. At its core. Okay. So let me explain it how. That's the next topic. Let me explain it how. Okay. So let me explain it. See, suppose this is ocean water. Okay. Suppose this is ocean water. So heard about carbonic acid? Have you heard about carbonic acid? Carbonic acid means what? Carbonic acid means water plus H2O plus CO2 will be giving carbonic acid. Carbonic acid. When we dissolve carbon dioxide into water, it will turn into carbonic acid. So this same mechanism, remember about that soft drinks. All those soft drinks like Mirinda, Pepsi, Coke, all that we drink contains carbonic acid. Okay. So how do we make it? We just inject pressurized carbon dioxide into fresh water. So just like it, if we produce more carbon dioxide by means of more fossil fuel production, more fossil fuel combustion, more deforestation, carbon dioxide will be getting dissolved into ocean water. Okay, and there is a normal thing. Out of total carbon dioxide produced by humans or in earth, 30 to 40% is naturally absorbed by ocean. There is no doubt in it. Out of total carbon dioxide in earth, yearly 30 to 40% of carbon dioxide is getting dissolved into ocean water. But once this percentage is getting increased, ocean water will become more acidic. Okay, so let me explain it. Let me explain it using some chemical reactions. Okay, these are simple chemical reactions. Suppose we produce more carbon dioxide. We produce more carbon dioxide. The rate of dissolution, or what? The rate of diffusion of carbon dioxide into water will be more, which will produce what? Carbonic acid. Carbonic acid. So I think you understood what is ocean acidification. Now let me explain the mechanism behind ocean acidification and its associated impacts. So once this carbonic acid is formed, it will split up into two ions, H plus ions and HCO3 ions. So this is hydronium ion. This is hydronium ion. This is bicarbonate ion. Okay. So whenever carbonic acid is formed, this carbonic acid after some time will be split into hydronium and bicarbonate ions. Which means ocean acidification means decrease in pH value, increase in H plus value, increase in HCO3 value. Got it? And what will happen to this HCO3? This HCO3 won't stay alone for a long time. This HCO3 again will be split up into what? Again they'll split up with again. See, suppose let me explain it more. One more step is here. Please do remember here. I am going to explain one more step. So again HCO3. Again earlier, so this is one case. Now take another scenario. In ocean there will be some carbonate ions. There will be always some carbonate ions. So this carbonate ion is very much required for some kind of animals. Some kind of animals like crustaceans, just like crabs or shells. Okay, where they need carbonate to make their shell, which is calcium carbonate. These are the shells of crustaceans. So what will this H plus ion do? This H plus ion will combine with carbonate ion to produce again bicarbonate ions. Getting it? So these are the three chemical reactions. First one, let me write it again. CO2 plus H2O, first step of ocean acidification, which will form carbonic acid. Carbonic acid will be split into two, H plus and HCO3. Here we have calcium carbonate formed because of calcium plus carbonate ion. So this carbonate ion is very much important for crustaceans. But this H plus will combine with carbonate ion to form HCO3. So what will happen? Carbonic ion concentration increases, H plus ion concentration increases, bicarbonate ion concentration increases, but carbonate ion concentration decreases. Less carbonate ion means no CaCO3. No CaCO3. No CaCO3 means harm to ocean organisms. Getting it? So this is the mechanism behind ocean acidification. Let me explain it again. Combination of carbon dioxide plus water will give carbonic acid, which will be split up into hydronium and HCO3. And hydronium ion combined with carbonate to form bicarbonate ion, which increases the concentration of bicarbonate ion. Getting it? So increasing bicarbonate ion means naturally decreasing CaCO3 and CO3 ion. So this is the mechanism behind ocean acidification. So let me sum up again. When ocean acidification happens, pH value of water decreases, concentration of H plus value increases, H plus ion increases, concentration of H3O3 ion increases, concentration of carbonate ion decreases. So bicarbonate increases, carbonate decreases. So these are the outcomes you should take away. This is the outcome of ocean acidification. Now are you clear with this mechanism of ocean acidification? So the biggest impact is if there is less CO3, there will be less CaCO3. If there is less CaCO3, organisms like coral reef would disappear, because coral reefs are made of CaCO3. They would be disappearing. All these are interconnected. All these are interconnected. So this is the mechanism of ocean acidification. So take the handout, page number 2. There is a writing about ocean acidification. Read it. Often known as the evil twin of global warming, ocean acidification is highly important, a high concern, a very important concern. Read it about. So mechanism regarding ocean acidification is explained in the handout. Read it thoroughly. So I have also explained the n number of effects of ocean acidification. There are many effects. Read those effects. Okay. And if you have finished reading those effects, can you do the sixth one? Can you read the sixth one? Ocean acidification. Take the last page of your handout. Question number 6 should be done. Ocean acidification increases the carbonate ion concentration in ocean water. Is it correct? No, it actually decreases the carbonate ion concentration. The growth and survival of coral reefs will be adversely affected because of ocean acidification. Yes, ocean acidification is a bad process. It will significantly affect other organisms including coral reef, as we saw it in the discussion. So only the second statement is correct. Sixth one, B is the correct statement. So this is it. This is an important topic regarding global warming and climate change. Ocean acidification is highly important. And next topic we have to discuss is what? Coral bleaching, an associated impact of global warming. So next topic we have to discuss is coral bleaching. So if you finish ocean acidification and its effect, now we will be going into coral bleaching. So our next topic is coral bleaching.